I just pooped myself at work and I want to die. I just had the worst nightmare happen. I pooped myself at work. It was so bad. I was able to get to the bathroom, but I didn't make it to the toilet. I had to throw my underwear away and my pants in a bag. I had to clean off the toilet seat. I want to cry. My husband works with me, so he was able to get a blanket from our car and get me out of there to go home, but I am so embarrassed. I literally want to quit my job. I am so afraid of being known as the girl who pooped herself at work. I want to throw up and cry. My anxiety is through the roof right now. I know I didn't get out unscathed. I know people saw it or smelled it. I am curled up in a blanket after coming home and showering, and I am sinking into a huge panic attack. By the way, it's our 10-year anniversary today. My husband keeps thanking me for pooping myself so we can go home early on our anniversary. I'm in shock. My date died. I'm a waitress and there was this guy who started coming in about a month ago. He just moved from California to my small town. He was cute, funny, and we really got along. He turned away all the other girls, so everyone started teasing me saying he was my boyfriend. Last Sunday, he finally asked for my number. It was so exciting. We started texting consistently to find out we had many shared interests. He finally asked me on a date Thursday night, but he drove a motorcycle and it was raining, so we rescheduled. He wanted to take me to a nice fancy restaurant for our first date. Around 5, he asked me if he could bring me dinner, and I was grocery shopping and I said I'd let him know. I texted him trying to get a time for our date for the next day. No answer. Later I asked if he was okay. No answer. My coworker told me that at 5:30 Thursday night he was hit by a van. 10 minutes after his last text message. I went to work today and had to take breaks because I couldn't look at his spot without crying. He kept telling me he liked me and he wanted to take me out and just couldn't wait. I'm having such a hard time with this. Evil woman gets karma. I was a bartender in a chain restaurant. Nearly every Friday the same smug, rude lady came in for lunch, which was a very busy time. Every time she made a point of never tipping. Fine, but also half the time she would complain over some minor inconvenience, and more than a few times got a free meal. Around Christmas I was shopping for family and friends. Picked out a nice top for my girlfriend at the time. Walking up to the cashier, I was surprised to see the evil lady. In street clothes, I'm guessing she didn't recognize me or didn't care. I hand her a $20 bill. She examined it, even held it up to the light and got out the counterfeit pen. I was thinking, a bit excessive, right? Change should have been around $1, but surprisingly, she handed out $81. No clue how she thought it was 100. She calls for the next in line, so I stepped to the side for a moment in contemplation. I could honestly feel the devil on one shoulder and angel on the other. I finally let my moral compass win and stepped back in front of the register. I started to explain the mistake but got shushed and told to leave. I did. I guess I can consider this to be all those tips she didn't give. I planted bamboo all around my apartment building to get revenge on my landlord. I'm playing the long game with this revenge. I live in a cheap one-bedroom apartment with my daughter who is now 8. We moved in over 4 years ago. My landlord promised me the 2-bedroom at a very reasonable rent price. Well, when the 2-bedroom became available, despite my income and ability to afford the rent we discussed, he told me he's not comfortable renting to someone on just one income, meaning a single mom. He knows I make enough to cover the 2-bedroom, but I guess he changed his mind without telling me. Instead, he rented it out to this couple who sell drugs. So, I ordered bamboo seeds and 3 years ago I planted them all over the building. From what I read, it takes up to 5 years for them to sprout and break ground, but before then they are forming extremely complex root systems underground, which will make it nearly impossible for him to ever get rid of the invasive plant. I can't wait. Neighbor Karen gets destroyed for trying to prevent new fence. I was building a new fence for my friend. He told me that the fence was definitely on his property and that the previous owner had deliberately given the neighbors some extra space to avoid calling a surveyor. While we were working, the neighbor, which I'll call Karen, came running outside screaming at me that I couldn't remove the fence and it was their property, telling me I had no right and that my friend didn't give them proper notice, and so on. I only responded calmly, which was hard, but I let my friend know and the project got put on hold, waiting for a $650 property survey. She demanded that we pay half, despite telling her that we were fine with them continuing to keep our couple feet of space. Fast forward to the surveyor, it turns out the old fence was not just a little on our property, but almost 12 feet or 4 meters, which even included the neighbor's flower beds and a nice brick retaining wall. That was very satisfying. Karen was silent after that. For only $325, my friend was entitled to expand his yard by about 800 square feet, and Karen had to move her gardens. Just be friendly, and this could have been avoided. I got simple revenge on my food thief roommate. My roommate was stealing my food, and not even hiding it. Apparently, he was bragging to my other roommates and calling me a pushover. I didn't want to get into it since I was moving away in 2 months, but I do want my food. Today, they were sitting in the kitchen talking. I came in, took my meatballs from the fridge, and licked them one by one while maintaining the eye contact with the thief. Then I licked several other items, spit into my milk, and so on. She looked utterly disgusted. Eventually she asked, "Are you insane?" I calmly replied, "I always do this, didn't you know?" and left. I don't know if she will stop, but she hasn't stolen any food since then. Her face of mixed disgust and horror made it worth it. My brother's fiancée is so stupid, and I do not want him to marry her. My brother's fiancée is so stupid that I cannot stand her. I'll just list a few. Our father lost his left leg below the knee in an accident before my brother and I were born, and she commented that it's crazy how we didn't inherit that. We laughed assuming it was a bad joke, but she didn't. Even after my brother explained it was an injury, not a genetic defect, she didn't get it. She told us she believed in Santa until she was 16. You know the joke that the pee is stored in the balls? She thought that was real. She thought pink lemonade was made from pink lemons and wondered why she never saw any in stores. She didn't realize Donald Trump the actor and the president were the same person. She thought blood diamonds meant they were made from blood and asked why they weren't red. She once tried to correct me when I mentioned something being $100 million. She said, "Don't you mean $1 billion?" She argued with me that the moon gave off light as opposed to reflecting the sun. I could go on for days. My brother was in college and met her at a music festival. She said college was too hard, of course. I have such a hard time being around her. My brother's a software engineer making 6 figures. I don't understand how he tolerates her. I asked my parents about having an intervention, but they said no. They thought she was sweet and they get along. Does no one else worry that she could make a terrible decision and severely affect my brother? Or when they have kids, she could put them in harm's way? What could she possibly teach them? I'm pretty sure someone is coming into my apartment when I'm not here. The worst part is, it's not to steal. I've been noticing things are out of place when I get home from work. My curtains were moved, cabinets were open. I just assumed I did it, until today. I walked into the kitchen and saw a couple of my drawers were open. I never touch my kitchen drawers. They're old, creaky, and gross. I live alone. This was the confirmation I needed, and it's terrifying. I know the goal is not to steal because I have a laptop, PCs, and TVs at home and they haven't been touched. I don't know what to do. I suspect it was my neighbor that lives across from me. This person has easy access to see when I've left. They also have the perfect amount of privacy to break in because we're the only 2 apartments on the first floor. Now that I'm locking my deadbolt, there's been 0 activity and I'm ordering some cameras. I'll update if anything happens. My friend got tortured. I'm a 25-year-old guy, and I have a friend I don't know too well who's 17. I've known him for a while through other friends, and I sometimes do him a favor like driving him back to his and my hometown. He's a good kid, he has a lot of energy, and is overall a good guy to be around. However, he's involved in narcotics and the distribution of it, and got involved with some nasty people. They caught him and ended up torturing the kid. Stuff like putting a hot iron on him, burning him with cigarettes, and a lot of awful stuff that you only see in movies. My heart is breaking for him. I know that you reap what you sow, and if you're involved in that stuff, bad things can happen, but it's just awful. I still see him as a kid, and nobody deserves that. It's a cruel world. Son's father disappeared 2 years ago until I found his podcast. After a brief summer relationship, I found out I was 10 weeks pregnant. I was told for years that I was incapable of conceiving. Surprise. The father convinced me we could do it together. Even if the relationship didn't continue on romantically, it would be fine. While we were still finding a place to live, he tells me he's moving in with a buddy from his team and I will just have to figure it out on my own at 7 months pregnant. It turns out he met someone new, started claiming it wasn't his kid. Honestly, it's fine. He was a constant headache and never really did anything to help. I still tried to contact him about being there for the birth. Of course, drama ensues. He visited 2 times in the first 6 months for about an hour, and the second time was to get a DNA swab for paternity, then dragged me through court claiming I wouldn't allow him access to his son, while also saying I'm a terrible, irresponsible mother. Then suddenly, he disappears. My son was almost 4 at this point. 2 years later, I find out he'd moved to Canada with his new family, and he's trying to become a famous fighter and trainer, shamelessly self-promoting, gaining a following. He's always talking about how he's a family man and doing it for his family. He started a podcast with a criminal co-host, and obviously never talks about his third child. I wonder how his fans would feel knowing this. I've spoken to a lawyer, but don't have high hopes.